Yep,
We're good?
you're on camera.
We're up and running? All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Curry County Budget Committee's back on record. Hope everyone is well. Got a lot of rain. That's good.
Amen.
Help with the fire season, right? All right. Why don't we start with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get to public comments, Commissioner Boyce, you wanted to recognize...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I learned last week that this is the National Police Week. It was set up by John Kennedy back in the 60s, and it's to recognize the men and women that we've lost. So far this year, we've lost 105. 10 of those are female. I was surprised by that statistic. For a year and a half, I did a line of duty death report, and then we got busy. So I'm hoping we can bring that back in the future. And maybe a moment of silence just for especially when you see what's going on in our country right now with the 2 mass shootings in less than 24 hours. Just heartbreaking. So if it's okay with you, a quick moment of silence.
I'd absolutely appreciate that. And then after we have a moment of silence, I'd like to say something about National Police Week that has a recent event that's had a direct impact here in Oregon. But let's have a moment of silence.
Thank you. Thank you again.
And thank you for that. And many of you know I've experienced the loss of folks that I've worked with, and recently, just as I think it was 2 weeks ago now, in Woodburn, Oregon, Woodburn police officer Anthony Ponce, he was part of a special weapons tactical team there. It's a multi-agency team. And they were called to assist the U.S. Marshals who had a wanted fugitive. He was a repeat offender. He'd been incarcerated quite a bit and had recently been released. The Marshals were hunting him. They found him at a truck stop off I-5, and he was non-compliant in a vehicle, and the SWAT team was called. Ponce was part of the SWAT team. They had surrounded the vehicle, several hours of negotiations, which had failed, and then the suspect emerged wearing ballistic armor, a mask, and armed with a heavy rifle. He shot Officer Ponce multiple times, and his team members were able to rescue him and put the suspect down. He is recovering now. He will survive, but his wounds were very serious. And it's just a reminder that can happen any day. It can happen any day. It can happen to our deputies, our police officers here in this community, and we should be reminded of that. And I wish Officer Ponce well. I have communicated directly with him, and I'm confident that he will recover, but it's just a reminder.
Mr. Chair, former Commissioner Rhodes, you and myself all have sons that are in law enforcement. We're very hard not to worry. But we're also very proud of them, and we're very proud of every person that takes on that task and serves nowadays, especially nowadays. So thank you again.
It is a difficult job today, sir. It is, and I hope there are enough young people in our communities that will continue to do that work, as difficult as it is. But thank you for recognizing that today.
Thank you.
All right, let's move forward to public comments. Mary, are you ready?
Well, she's coming up, Mr. Chair. You mentioned fire season. The governor's having a press conference. I just got a note here at 11 o'clock, so I don't know if we'll be done by then, but it'd be nice to maybe take a break about that time, hear what she has to say. And forgive me, Mary, for interrupting.
I just want people to really look at this and test it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna drop my pen on the floor so that I can get it now. I'm Mary Rowe. Our county obviously has a need for more revenue. This year, this budget committee and ultimately the Board of Commissioners may vote to use American Rescue Plan or ARP funds to continue county operations, funds that could have been used to fund crucial services provided by nonprofits in our community. This was done so that you would not have to use the Road Reserve Fund out of concern that it could become dangerously depleted. In short, our county government cannot wait any longer and, in fact, is overdue in its need for increased revenue. I urge you to respect county residents by providing ballot choices in November about what type of tax should be implemented. What type of tax that I am presenting, the type of tax that I am presenting to you was worked on initially by an intelligent, well-educated, and practical man, a retired engineer, a humble Curry County citizen who cares about our county's welfare. Engineers develop solutions based upon the realities of the situation, utilizing known facts and working in a logical progression. And they consider the economy of scale, which is the proportionate savings in cost gained by an increased level of production. He chose an income tax as being a sensible solution to our county government's revenue needs. Each type of tax has pros and cons, of course. For instance, one disadvantage of an increase in property taxes is that some low-income seniors would not be able to afford it. Also, a property tax has been voted down times in Curry County. Noted that Joseph to increase their property tax under already existing services. Taxes those who cannot vote on it. Prepare a hot, nourishing meal. A consumption tax would require setting up a new structure to administer the tax. If we establish a consumption tax with partial reimbursement for our residents, so that it is primarily aimed at non-residents, a precedent would be set that nearby jurisdictions could copy. And given that we shop in larger nearby communities more than their residents shop in our county, we could end up paying more in other counties than they pay in ours. An income tax allows easy and accurate forecasting. The state would collect it for the county, and it would be non-regressive. In 2019, there was $27,781,000 personal income tax revenue from Curry County for the state. So, if for instance we need to raise $6 million, then a surcharge of 10.8% of the state income tax would provide that. Again, please respect the hard work of the originator of this effort, the original committee that shepherded it, and the recent nonpartisan advisors to that group, including myself, and then high-level county and former county officials who advised the committee at my request by allowing the county income tax to be put on the November ballot as a choice for our citizens. A representative from the nonpartisan coalition that will oversee this effort moving forward could join your educational town hall panels, etc. So I asked Mr. Alcorn if I could have some engagement with the budget committee, and specifically that would mean I'm going to ask you, would you consider giving the citizens of this county a choice by allowing them to choose between more than one tax, including an income tax?
Definitely. Consider it? Yeah, you bet.
Okay, thank you. Wipe this off since I dropped my stuff on the floor.
Any other questions for Mary before she goes?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next I'd like to move into item 3A, which is the review of the current budget. Brad, I know last time we left, there were a few things that were unresolved, some numbers being plugged in, and maybe you can kind of update us on where we're at.
Okay, so since our last budget meeting, I made a few adjustments based off the recommendations of the budget committee. And so that's just a quick summary of what those were. Vehicle sales and vehicle replacement department were reduced $56,000 to zero. There's $56,000 that was moved from the contingency in the Sheriff's Special Revenue Fund to patrol to help fund that department. Capital outlay in the road department in the area of bridge improvements increased $300,000 to $1.6 million. And then also the reimbursement in the same department for the Morrill Bridge increased $200,000 to $1.2 million. There was an increase to the treasurer's wages of 8.25%. And the last thing that we talked about was putting in a 10% increase based off of the compensation board's recommendation for the sheriff's wages, and that was to make sure that he stayed ahead of the captain. As I went back to the budget and started working on that, I realized that there was already 5% put in, and that was enough to keep the sheriff ahead of the captain. So I left it at that because I felt like that was the idea behind putting an increase in for the sheriff, to keep him ahead of the captain. But that is a deviation from what we talked about, and if the budget committee wants me to go back and put an additional 5% in there for the sheriff, I can do that. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. And then maybe just a quick recap from what's happened since the first budget committee. We started off the budget process with a $5.8 million budget gap. That has been reduced to just over $4 million, and that $4 million is being funded by roughly $1.9 million from ARP funds and $2.1 million from the road reserves.
You said 2 point what?
2.1 from the road reserves. So we have reduced that budget gap $1.8 million.
And with the utilization of the 2.1, where's that put the road reserves at?
From the budget, as far as the budget, the numbers in the budget go, $18 million at the end of the next fiscal year. And these are, I want to point out that these are budgeted numbers, they are conservative numbers.
Right.
And the actuals could be different.
Yes.
Glad you asked that. Thank you. Just quickly, so the 18 million that we're looking at the screen now, just slightly over, that's after the 2.1.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, we also talked about the timber sales. There was some discussion about kind of where that landed. Brad, do you have information on that?
I don't have the information. Becky had that, I thought she was.
That's on the agenda.
Yeah,
It is?
that would be number B.
It's
Chris,
Ms.
thank you.
Crockett. It's Ms. Crockett supposed to be here to talk about that.
So she was up here a little bit ago and said that she will not be able to make it, and it's her recommendation that we do not sell anything at this time.
We do not.
Do not.
Okay.
We might want to discuss that, perhaps. Up to you, for a few minutes when the time comes.
So as far as the budget goes, the timber sales, whether we sell land, whether we sell timber, far as budget purposes go, I almost recommend that we keep that off the budget right now. Because as we progress further in the next few months and we get more information on it, we have more firm numbers, we can add those into the budget.
Sure.
Which will then make everything look better at that time. Whereas right
Right.
now, if we put those numbers in when we're not sure what the best thing is to do and what those numbers are, we could be setting it up to make things worse if those things don't come to fruition. So I'm recommending that we just move ahead without.
No, I agree.
numbers
If
in right
if there
now.
is no sale of anything, if nothing changes. If there is, it just gets better, so.
Yeah.
So I would definitely agree with that. I was hoping we'd have some clarity with it, but if we don't, it's obviously something we move forward, yes.
Well, in clarity, so she's saying there's parcels of land to sell. That's what her recommendation is, to not sell those. We will still probably have a timber sale in 2023. But timber, there's land that we thought had timber on it that turned out to be a lot of tan oak and not profitable to log. So
Oh,
it might be.
yeah.
It might be more profitable to sell that property, but not right, her recommendation is not right now.
So it may or may not be, and that's a decision for the three of you to make,
Yeah.
obviously, and that may factor into,
Yeah.
to the budget, or may not, so that we don't know. So we'll move forward from that, and you guys can discuss that in your additional meetings.
We just want to hope that we just wouldn't get a very good price right now was her concern. And it's because the timber market's gone down dramatically. We hope it comes back up, but it's just, as you just said, we'll have to just review it periodically, see where we are, and hopefully it'll come back. Yeah, thank you.
Question. So my understanding is the property at Airport Road that's gonna be used for housing, that timber sales, that was already included in this budget. Am I wrong about that?
Did we conclude? Let me double check.
I don't think so right now.
Yeah, we did include that. Wasn't a huge
We did
number,
include
but
$350,000 in timber sales.
Yeah.
I do get a little confused on which property that is, but,
That's Airport Road.
okay.
Okay.
So
And
that's
that is-
already budgeted
Yeah.
as revenue. Okay.
Is that timber sales, is that gross revenue, or is that revenue net of the expense that it would cost to replant?
That is a projected net.
I'm just not terribly optimistic that that's gonna be a reliable number. If the market stays or goes slightly up, yeah. So I've got my fingers crossed, basically. Thank you.
Any other discussion on that topic? All right, and then let's move to C, which is the Moss Adams audit. There was some additional information that came in on that I think is worth discussing. Commissioner Ash?
Right. And firstly, I just want to thank Brad because Ruckert, our accounting guy here, he is, I just want to let the public know that Brad is doing this budget extremely conservatively. So this $2.1 million that is road fund dollars, that's an extremely conservative number, and I believe that we as we go along I hope anyway that number will be greatly reduced because of the way that Brad's done this budget. What I want to say on this Moss Adams is I continue to get some emails and phone calls. I actually got a couple more over the weekend about the trust of the citizens in the county about about the audits that are performed. And I know Commissioner Boyce has asked to have another audit, and a couple of those emails referenced why aren't we approving an audit from Marina, I guess is who AOC recommended.
Or you could choose another firm if you're not thrilled with those. Could have. I think that ship was probably sailed, though, Commissioner. But yes, Marina is proper.
Right, Marina was the firm that, from what I understand, AOC recommended that we use as an audit firm. And what I want to bring attention to is that we do have an audit done every year, and it's done by Moss Adams, and they are a state agency. They report to the state on the audits and how they're done. And I just want to bring something else to the attention of this board, of this committee, and that is a report that was done. This was published on October 6th of 2018, and it was done by Moss Adams. And it is Oregon County Group Misused Funds, Mismanaged Budget, and Investigation Finds. And this was an audit that Moss Adams did, and it was done on AOC. And they found that AOC had mismanaged about $1 million in their funds. And there were some heads put on the block for that later, but I just want to show that this company is really good at what they do, and I can imagine that they may not be liked very much right now by AOC because of the misuse. And I want to also say that it was not all of AOC that was guilty in the misuse of those funds. It was a couple of individuals who were dealt with accordingly later. But this company is doing an annual audit of the county funds every year. They are a highly respected company. Those audits are turned into the states and gone through again and looked at for anything that may be a gray area, anything that might have been not done properly, and those kind of things. So it doesn't only stop with them. It stops with state controllers and those kind of people. So I just want to assure the public that we are getting an annual audit done of our budget, and it is being investigated thoroughly, and by not only one agency, but more than one agency. And we are currently in full compliance with all state laws and regulations.
And I will say that I talked to the person that did the audit, and she made it very, well, at the conclusion of our conversation, it was very clear to me that if something would have been discovered, it would have been reported. And that was very clear to me in our conversation. So, Mr. Baker, you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I want to support what Mr. Pasek has mentioned concerning our annual audits. Obviously, in my past profession, I'm very familiar with what a full audit versus a review would reveal. One of the key item that covers misuse of funds or improper accounting is internal control. The full audit that we go under every single year does touch on internal control. Now, with respect to different audits and the scopes that they have, one scope is an internal audit, but the nature of the review where we contract with Moss Adams every year hits on internal control, and the work that's being done in the finance and the treasurer's departments follow the general rules and pass those tests concerning internal control. And Moss Adams, in its review, brings that up in several places.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I went on the AOC Board of Directors right after that period. That's when Executive Director Mike MacArthur was sent packing. Great guy, but he made a horrible mistake. And then they brought in Mike Eliason as Executive Director. He was making $120,000 a year. That didn't go over real well with a lot of, just base salary, with a lot of commissioners and board members. And so they were very surprised, AOC was, to find out the level of difficulties and misspent money. And so current executive director now, Gina Nickel, inherited all that and is doing quite well to straighten that out. And I think AOC is coming back fairly strong, but there has been some turnover, and it's a very important organization, and I think they are. And I've never ever communicated to this board, nor have I privately to anyone, that I've had a lack of confidence in Moss Adams, and that remains the same. I'd love to see them just come here so we can get better acquainted and give a presentation to this committee or the board or both, and learn all that we can. You know, that's basically all I have, except that we've heard over the last 2 or 3 years, not from me, but different commissioners, these are extremely conservative. And then we get 2 or 3 years later and we go, oh, maybe they weren't so conservative. That's my issue, that's my concern. And so here we are. And I'll conclude with this, at least for now, that as far as ARP, I have no confidence we're going to get the other $2.2 million. The way our United States government's being managed right now, I mean, I think all of us could talk and share some information on our apprehension and our concern for the amount of money that both at the state and federal level is going out, and we're banking on getting another 2.2. I hope I'm wrong, but I really suspect something's going to happen in the next year or so that might prohibit that. So I'm not real thrilled about using ARP funds because I don't know if they're going to be there. So I'm going to take everything into consideration and make my decision, and hopefully lobby other members of this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that time.
Sure.
Brad, when is that second round supposed to show up?
This month.
This month? And we're at the 16th, so we're halfway. Okay.
So,
And it's not here, we haven't received it yet.
Not as of this morning.
so I apologize. I might be confused, but I know that we have till, what is it, June of 2024 to spend it or to appropriate it, allocate it, initiate it, whatever. And if we do get that money, of course, I'm going to be saying, put it away, put it in the lockbox, and be extremely careful. But that, I've been very consistent on that over the years.
I have a comment. Regarding what Mr. Pash said earlier about this budget being very conservative on the spending side, I'm assuming. Do you agree with that, Mr. Ricker?
I do, I agree with that. I have some more information that I'll present to the board in my financial review later this week about where I am projecting that we will end up for the year, which will show how conservative these numbers are. I do believe that the beginning balance here in the road reserves could be bumped up to 21, maybe even 22 million. The amount in the road funds, or I'm sorry, the amount in the road operational department, I'm expecting that they'll roll over about $3.5 million instead of that projected $2 million that is in the budget. So yes, I do believe that they are conservative numbers.
So if they are, would that result in, I guess, a massive reduction in the amount of money coming from the road fund? Is that what you're saying? For the next year?
No, that is a possibility, but we will still have $1.2 million budgeted to come out of the road fund, but the ending balance here at the end of the next fiscal year will be in a better position than what we are budgeting currently. But to your point, if departments continue their careful spending, there will be less that is used in the FY23 budget, and therefore less than 2.1 million will come out of the road funds. And that's what we're seeing this year too, because departments have worked hard to reduce their spending, not spend everything that was budgeted, spend it on what was needed. We are seeing that they are not going to use as much general funds or as many funds from the road funds as what was budgeted. So those amounts will stay with the road fund, increasing this beginning balance for the next fiscal year.
So if I understand what you're saying, if some departments underspent, that keeps money in the general fund, which can be used to fund the sheriff's department, which keeps the road funds in the road department. Is that right?
Exactly. That's exactly what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pash.
And as Mr. Mr. Rickard showed us at the last budget meeting, some of the departments are only at 50 and 60% when they could be at 80%. So we're only 7-8 weeks out from the end of this budget cycle, and we are, some of these departments, I applaud them. They're doing really, really well on conserving money, and all that will roll back over into the fund, yes. If they're general fund items.
Any further discussion on this? All right, let's move to item D, which is the ARP usage, and Brad, you have some information on that.
Yeah, there's been several statements made over the last couple of months about about whether or not ARP funds can be used to fund the budget in the way that we're doing. And I just wanted to read something straight from the final rule that was put out by the Treasury Department on January 27th. And this is talking about revenue loss. The final rule offers a standard allowance for revenue loss of up to $10 million, not to exceed this recipient's SLFRF award amount, allowing recipients to select between a standard amount of revenue loss or complete a full revenue loss calculation. Recipients that select a standard allowance may use that for government services. So right there in the rule, it states that the full $4.4 million that the county received could be used to fund government services. At this point, the budget committee is electing to use about $1.9 million of that, but it is an authorized use under the new guidelines or the new rule for revenue loss on ARP funds.
Does not have to be tied to COVID losses, as far as you know.
No, they set up a standard allowance of $10 million that can be used for government services.
Okay.
I can bring, if you'd like, I can bring that up on the screen and you can see the rule on yourself.
Well, you've read it more than once, so.
Language is pretty clear there.
Even I remember that, so.
Captain McDonald has some information on this as well, so he's going to step up to the podium.
Before he gets there, Chair, I mean, we've had this conversation. That's why we allowed it weeks ago, right? I mean.
Correct.
Okay,
But
so
there was questioning about it. I want to make sure the public understands.
Thank you.
We can use
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and the choice to use it for the county.
Yeah, okay.
Just for clarification on this particular topic, if you go back to Friday, this past Friday, President Biden had law enforcement leaders and mayors from all over the United States into the White House and specifically said, you need to fund the police, use American Recovery Acts for it. And it's specific quotes from our president saying to use this fund for this. So I can show you the news article. You can Google back to Friday. I mean, it was a White House event where they're saying to use, as these funds are getting ready to be released, the second round, they're saying to you use this money to fund the police.
Yeah.
So.
Commissioner Woods.
Captain, you said American Recovery Act. You meant American Rescue Plan.
Yeah, excuse me, yeah.
That's okay.
6.5
I'm sure you did, but I thought we'd better make sure. So
but
we're on the
yes.
same page.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's coming from whether, I don't care what your politics are, that's coming from the White House, that's coming from the president saying, use this money for this purpose. So, if you didn't see that on Friday, it's out there.
Thank God he got on board finally.
So, okay.
Thank you.
I'll feel better when that check is in
If you do me a
the.
favor, turn that light switch on, because on the video, these guys are showing up like they're nefarious. There we go. That's a little better.
Okay.
They're still nefarious.
Looks like you guys are in the dark, in the shadows of the room.
Wouldn't be the first time. All right, so before we get to item E, I got an email from Mr. Baker over the weekend, and he had some information that he wanted to discuss and present that relates to the budget, so now I'll give you time to do that, Mr. Baker.
All right, I have a little handout here.
I have one, thank you.
Folks, taking the purpose of this presentation is to look for answers that we have been discussing during the last couple of months. Folks, taking a slightly different perspective here.
on the need for revenue.
Need for what?
The need for revenue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Sorry. What, being new to the committee, during all of these sessions, I've certainly raised quite a number of issues that have been discussed, centering in on basically this fiscal year budget that we're working on right now. So what I did was to look for answers and to reveal more of what was going on, is that I went into the Curry County database and reviewed the audited statements. So we'll take you back to 2013. And put this into a comparable format. The Moss Adams statements do present the standard format of in the commercial area an income statement, and for municipal accounting it's called a statement of activities. I would have preferred that we had a current year activity presentation, but it's not available in the form. So anyway, what is the point of taking a look at these numbers? If you go down to the bottom line for each of the years, you will see that we have had a majority of profit loss. We had a series of losses here. So essentially, and understandably, is that revenue has fallen in these odd scenario here. Originally working on this budget, I thought this year might be so unique in our shortfall, but as it turns out, it's not. So to sort of to summarize here a couple things. One is that the expenses are generally expected to either, well, go in three directions. One would be reduce expenses, which is probably the most unlikely scenario. Second, they would stay the same. Third, they would increase. And obviously, I think we're taking a look at maybe an average of the latter two. So essentially, it is easier to address expenses when you compare it to revenue. Raising revenue is a more slow-moving, more difficult animal to corral, so to speak. Expenses are more easier, which is what we've been doing during the budget sessions that we've had here. Now getting into the revenue section, essentially one of our saving graces, one of the ideas that Mr. Barnes has presented several sessions ago is the consumer tax. And Mary just brought up an issue about an income tax versus raising this funds has some issues associated with it. So anyway, that's number one. That's one of the good sides here. Number two is that there is a little bit of revenue coming in from the Fed's prime rate increase on working capital. From what I understand, as far as the general fund is concerned, that is sort of a minor contribution to the increase. So where does that leave us? And this is sort of the answers that I come away with respect to doing this analysis. I think we have to seriously look at a property tax consideration along with, and as Mary pointed out, an income tax potential to be given to up for the general. History of our property tax according to the audit statements. So you can see there are really two. Number one is that in the last 10 years, the rate has stayed consistently the same. And, assuming that we were in that would be an extremely good thing, but we're not. Second is that we are perhaps the lowest of all the counties in Oregon. With our budget in this presentation. Pretty much where we are. Questions, concerns?
Well, for me, again, you know, if we raise the property tax, the problem that we have here in Curry County is we have so many special districts that the general fund will only see 6 cents per that. So it would take a huge lift in property taxes. We could triple the property taxes right now. It would take basically tripling property taxes for the general fund to get enough money to meet its deficit. So until we can deal with the special district issue, I don't see a way that raising property taxes in any menial way that would get passed would help the county at all. Could we form another taxing district, special district for law enforcement or the sheriff's department? I could see that happening, but we've also got to reduce the special districts of this county because, and I think we're finally starting to educate some of the public in this county as to the special districts of this county and how they're set up and how they draw 3% every year. It just keeps going up and they double about every 20 years. So until we can deal with that issue, which is a time-consuming issue and a lot of work, we can't fix that problem. I agree. I agreed with Commissioner Boyce several years ago about the possibility of a consumption tax, and it was finally brought to fruition by Treasurer Barnes, and I agree with the basics of that. You know, we've still got some work to do on that, but an income tax is going to be another. That's going to be a hard pass. I mean, could we put two questions on the ballot? Absolutely, and let the public decide. But
Well,
as far as this goes, the real estate raising of the real estate tax, it's a.
The more that I get into real estate tax, actually, there's number one would be the rate itself. A counterbalance to keeping the rate the same is the increase in the property values. Time goes on. Is another way to take a look at it. Taking a look at leaving the appropriate in this particular scenario. But again, going back to your argument, yes, you're correct that the amount of money being raised, the amount of money that would be realized for the county in order to solve the gap issue is
Nominal.
well, we don't need to raise anybody's property taxes if we can just send away percentages to these special districts. And if we can find a way to do that, and I recognize that's hard, and I recognize it's problematic, and it's time consuming and all of those things, but that didn't cost anybody any more money other than the work put in to do it. Council?
Yeah, I know just enough to be a little dangerous here. I'm glad the assessor came in, but I believe that back in the 90s, Measure 50 capped the tax rate for property taxes, and by law we can't raise that. But maybe, Jim, if you could, do
you mind if I step into the conversation, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Watch your head.
Good morning, Budget Committee. Chris, you and I are going to have to spend more time talking about property taxes. If the county was to go out and successfully implement say a 5-year serial operating levy or a excuse me, or a law enforcement district, we're not limited to 6% of whatever we put up there. I mean,
Right.
Whatever the voters approve, the county would get all of that. Right now, on the pie chart, we're at 6% based on what all the districts get. So, you know, we're collecting $30 million. The county takes about 6% of that. If we vote in a law enforcement district that takes another $2 million, then those percentages for all the districts are going to change. So I don't want you, if you vote in a district or if the voters vote in a new district for, you know, to collect $2 million, that we'd only get 6% of that. That's not accurate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't say that though.
I thought I heard that's what you
No,
were saying.
no, what I was saying something off the cuff. I don't care if you raise triple the property taxes, we still only get 6 cents on the dollar. If you create a law enforcement district, then yes, the law enforcement district would get that money for whatever tax rate you set for the district.
It may be that I misunderstood. I heard you start talking and I hit it over here, so I didn't hear your whole statement. It's a district, or whether we do a 5-year operating levy, much like the Sixes or the Port Orford Rural Fire Protection District. I don't know if you know, they have a 5-year operating levy that they renew every 5 years. Regardless, they get whatever amount of money the voters approved, not just 6% of it.
Right.
I'm not sure if there was something else that was said.
I got a question for Jim. So Anthony just said we cannot raise property taxes according to a bill or a...
Well, Measure 50 limited property tax rates for all the districts, but all of the districts do have the opportunity to vote in up to 5-year operating levies. Okay. And so that's one option for the county, or another is just a law enforcement district, you know, where we set up a whole new district for whatever area of the county that we would do it in. Presumably a law enforcement district would be for the entire county. And then there's no limit on that district because it's a new district and the voters vote in whatever tax rate, you know, either yes or no on whatever tax rate is proposed.
Just for the special district.
Just for that district, yes.
Just for that
Yes.
district.
Excuse me, Mr.
All of the other districts, again, yes, are
They're the same.
limited in their tax rates. And I heard Mr. Baker, I think it was you that mentioned that Curry County has the lowest tax rate in the state, and we do. For a while, it was Josephine County, but Josephine County has also voted in a levy for either their new jail over there, or they've also, I believe, voted in a new law enforcement levy. So we're well under where they are. In fact, if you look at consolidated tax rates for all of the districts in the county, I'm taking all the districts and taking an average of the consolidated tax rates, Curry County's average is about $9 per thousand for all the districts, whereas the average for the state of Oregon is $15, $16 per thousand. So we're well under that. Excuse me.
You're gonna pay for that.
Well, I rushed right over here. I wasn't expecting to come.
Wow, we are almost half of the average.
Commissioner
Surprised
Boyce, you had a
everybody
comment?
doesn't know here.
Thank you, Ms.
Statewide, the average for a county in their total of property taxes, the average for a county is about 18% of the total tax collected for all the districts in their counties.
Commissioner Boyce, you had a comment?
We're short on item 3F. Are we?
We haven't got there yet.
Okay. Well, we're sort of in that, which is fine. I mean, the reason I asked that is because I was going to ask his opinion on the taxing district potential consolidation. So I kind of wanted your okay to bring that up now, or maybe we could wait to bring him back or whatever.
Well, we can talk about it now while he's here.
Okay. You know, I think we're all interested in understanding all that we can about the taxing districts. You hear that Curry County has the lowest tax rate in the state, but we also have all these taxing districts. So, you know, that that skews it just a little bit, but what is your thoughts as far as consolidating and how that money would actually come back to the general fund, how it actually save? I'm just a little bit fuzzy on that. I see the practical
We
reason.
talked about this before. Do you remember my comments on that before? Okay.
Enlighten.
That's why we're asking again.
So, if two or more of the other taxing districts consolidate at whatever tax rate, I mean, most of the time, say if it's an annexation of one taxing district into another taxing district, the district that is annexing into another district just assumes the tax rate of that parent district. That happens if it saves money for both of those districts. That's good. That's good for the citizens in those districts. You know, maybe it causes less taxes to be levied to them every year. In a merger, you might take 2 or 3 taxing districts, and what you do is you take the amount of money that they levy in taxes, total it, and then average that back out again. And so, you know, it might be that some of the people in one of those districts might lower their tax rates, others might raise their tax rates. But if there's any money saved, that again is good for the people in the districts. It doesn't leave any leftover money out there that can come to the county. That's off the table. That cannot happen. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. But, you know, we've all, I think it's fair, we've been just spending time with the tax.
But
Okay.
through that process, there's no way any of that money is coming back. And
Commissioner-
constitutional.
Spend on the consolidation of our taxing district. That's where I'm just a little unsure.
You know, some
About this. But that makes it easier. Let's say we can consolidate 14 fire districts. Now they're going to be those services. But you're not going to raise your taxes. Consolidating them. Now we want to form a law enforcement district, and we'd like to, I'm probably not going to say it the way that the state would, you know. My bottom line is, yes, I know the taxpayers are going to have to vote this all in, but it makes it easier to bring a law enforcement district to the voter. Tax assessment isn't really going to go up, but they're going to get better service. And also, by like I said, by consolidating fire districts, if they can reduce the amount that they take from the tax roll, then we can.
Well, to keep things like to down and really issue, and I'm following what if you haven't been following along and we just, why can't you just percentage to go to law enforcement? We still want to fund this district to law enforcement. Why can't we vote on that? Sure.
Well, no, I'm not an expert in myself when I comment for council to one subject. So we wouldn't be able to do a measure that says, let's, that's one, and then give that money to another. Yeah, that's on the same. You can't take just one vote for that.
In my life, I've heard you can't do that. Do it.
It would be extremely difficult. There'd be a lot of every or increasing the tax reduction. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be done. It would be complicated though, but.
Or not, say, the Board of Commissioners could put a measure on that would impact levy of another district. If that were to come from outside the governing board members of that district, then I imagine by petition of the people or something.
Right. Well, let's just say we'll call it District A. District A, and this is what people in our county have been communicating to me. District A that says we would like to reduce the money going to 50%. And then the other measure would say, from the money from District A, we would like that 50% to go to the Sheriff's Department. Why can't we do that?
I think that we could, I don't think we could tie it together. We could just say, hey, we're going to try to raise the sheriff's department. We're taking it from District A because we're really not. We're reducing District A and then increasing the tax over here. So
Right. We want to reduce District A and we want to increase District D this much.
Right, and I think that's fine. I just don't know if we can say we're taking the money from, like we can
Right.
campaign or say that
Right.
we're going to do it.
It's a play on words, but you understand the concept,
I do,
right?
yeah.
Because by doing that, it doesn't cost anybody any money other than the districts that are getting the money. Go ahead.
I think we should get the clerk over here in elections, Shelley, I mean, this is questions
Right.
for them, not, we can make all decisions and it's.
Right.
it's like-
And my point is this. Obviously, when you're running for office, your interaction with the community changes quite a bit, and mine has. And in my conversations with people in the county, they understand that times have changed. Back when these special districts were formed, there was a need for this. It was important. It was valuable. But now that things have shifted and times have changed, a realignment of that money makes more sense. Because that doesn't cost anybody, again, other than the special districts. And I realize things are, hey, life is hard, man. Things are hard, things are difficult, but it's not impossible to do. It just takes putting experts in the room to do that. Mr.
A
Baker.
general question, with respect to changing taxing districts, in other words, setting up either a special district, this is a general question. Are changes with respect to taxing districts, is this a revenue neutral endeavor? Meaning that if a district has a change of rates in where you reduce the rate in one district versus another, or put it to a particular department, is this revenue neutral, meaning that there won't be additional revenue recognized here? Is that what's happening with this discussion?
That was kind of my question there, that you're.
Right. Are we raising,
Yeah.
the basic question here is that with respect to addressing tax districts, are we raising revenue, or is this effort tax or revenue neutral?
It would be revenue neutral.
Is revenue neutral?
Right.
But what,
So again, we're back sort of in the same bucket.
but not necessarily,
No.
because it would be, in a convoluted way, it would be raising revenue, because if you're, let's just use the fire districts. Let's say we were to be able to consolidate to 3 fire districts, and they found that they could operate that way with a half a point less of what they're getting as a group of districts now, on an average. What you could do on that question is, with that consolidation, 2 questions, and I don't know, again, this is elections and the treasurer's office, or I'm sorry, the assessor's office, you know, how the legal aspect of all that works with council. But with that reduction, the second part is, with that, we approve a formation of a sheriff's district, and that additional money would go into that sheriff's
Right.
district to form the district.
It's a realignment of money.
It's just a realignment of
But
money.
it's only a realignment.
Yeah,
And it's,
it's,
like I said, it's a convoluted way of doing it, but it's a way to
It's-
do it, and I'm not sure that that's the way to do it, but it's an
I think
idea.
conceptually, we ought to walk away with that understanding.
Right.
That indeed,
Right.
the effort put into this is not going to hit a budget gap during any one fiscal year.
right.
And the bottom line to the taxpayer is, we're not raising your taxes, we're just
Sure.
reorganizing them.
We're realigning your money based on the priorities and needs of this county.
Right.
That's what we're doing.
That's what this is.
That should be the easiest thing to pass in the world. Revenue neutral, I mean, even
it's,
I get that.
But it's going to take some education, and like I said, and the interaction and the conversations I've had with members of this community, that makes sense. It makes sense to do that. It makes sense to realign it based on the current needs of this county. Right now, the current needs of this county are law enforcement, and we'll still fund that money. Will still fund special districts. There will still be funding going towards that, but there's a shift in priorities somewhat, and that funding will go to where it's needed right now. And it's a matter of language, it's a matter of procedure or protocols to do it, and it's some work, but that's what we're supposed to be doing, and that's the long-term fix. And I understand that doesn't happen overnight, I get that. So we may need something in to bridge the gap, which would be a short period, or some type of a consumption tax that would bridge that gap until we can put those mechanisms in place. But I am confident that the people in this county, based on my interaction with them, would completely support realigning their funding, their money they're already paying, just realigning it to fit the priorities and needs today.
We have two general priorities now. One, the original one was the deficit, the current, the budget year deficit. Number 2 is a realignment of those two. So I think they each deserve equal weight
Sure.
of consideration. Realignment, fine. Addressing the deficit is equally weighted.
Commissioner Pash.
And the troubling part for me is, I've done this off and on in my tenure here, when you go talk to districts, some of the districts about this is tax. More about special districts you get every year. 3% do at least table and is that deficit road fund
What,
Right.
they're not gonna
I the authorities have Mr. Herzog.
Why?
Okay, which is basically three superintendent that runs the schools' budgets. And I'm not picking on anyone. All I'm saying is this is a conversation that we could have. Just we got to have people come to the table. I'm not saying to take anything from the schools. I'm just saying, can we run it more efficiently?
Well, and that there is always compromise. There's always two sides to the story. There is always compromise. But if the people of this county want that to happen, and they want our districts to come together and find that compromise and work together, then it's the responsibility of the commissioners of this county to make that happen. And that's what's important. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing, that's for sure. And it's the ultimate goal. So I have heard since I have moved here, we just don't do it that way. It's too hard. It's too difficult. Well, that don't work. It doesn't work for me. You know what? I like difficult. Bring it.
The reason and I mentioned the school districts is because it wouldn't just be a battle, or it wouldn't just be a question for the citizens. Very in fact, it would be accomplished would be so.
Keep going.
All good for fighting, man. I understand how to do that. And I think if the people in this county are loud enough, I think our special districts will listen. I think we can come to a compromise. Hopefully we can work this out without having to go above anybody else. But the priorities in this county are shifting. The people are paying attention, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Commissioner Boyce.
I think this discussion right here, I mean, it shows we can approach it. We have a lot of opportunity. And this information you came up with, I mean, I got a stack of stuff to read, but it got moved to the top really quick. Even though it's only 3 pages, I'm going to read it a couple of times because it's very informative. I just squeezed into the budget agenda for Wednesday some task forces. You know, people here find the experts. It can contribute. We can solve. When it comes to the state level, we have good representation there. We're against a tremendous majority that doesn't see things, unfortunately, our way. Sometimes, yes, on law enforcement, But even then, usually not. My point is this: they're back to the opportunities we have. I put that on your desk. You can call it whatever you want. I'll just give you the three titles real quick. I think this is where we're going. We had last Wednesday a special meeting on the consumption tax and things. We are citizens, question mark. From everyone, commissioners, all have communicated the same and reinforcing what you offered. There, that those that's our best chance of getting to the citizens and having a win, whether that's November or 1 year from now, or even a year in March 2023. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, we're approaching the break. So any further discussion on this topic?
I don't want you to think I'm trying to throw a wet blanket on your ideas, because I'm not. I'm just trying to point out that there's some
Jim,
hoops to jump through.
Jim, I know there's hoops, and I know it's difficult, and I know that poses challenges, but I'm willing to accept them, and I'm willing to fight through them, and that's why I'm running for office. So bring them. That's what I have to say. Let's take a break. Let's take a 15-minute break, come back at 10:30, and then I want to get into, this is a time-sensitive issue for Brad. I want to talk about approving this budget and whether or not we can do that. So we'll come back at 10:30. Thank you. How we should proceed? Any comments? Mr.
Well,
Pash?
I'll proceed with this. Again, I will just reiterate that Brad has what I consider given us a very, very conservative budget, and I believe that if the departments continue to run their departments as they've shown us in their history, that we will be, I would be hopeful that we would not be using 2.1 of the road fund at the end of the year.
And I would definitely concur with that, and I would also recognize that we've gone through, in some cases, line by line and made cuts. And I don't know that more cuts can be made. I think we've been very diligent in recognizing where cuts have been made and making those cuts all across the board. So I don't know that there's more that we can do. Mr. Baker.
Brad, where does without road funds, where does the current deficit stand, government-wide?
Well, it's current deficit's $4 million.
So you have a current
Yeah,
deficit.
and that's being funded partially through road funds.
And go ahead,
No,
Mr.
go
Wilson.
ahead.
Go ahead.
So that's down from 5.8?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, my understanding, thank you.
Any recommendations?
Well, I can, from my perspective, unfortunately, the budget committee has yet to address this deficit with respect to revenue. And so, I believe my perspective would be is that our work isn't finished.
And you mean in terms of future revenue? Is that what you're saying?
Well, for this budget year, for the budget year that we're working on.
Right.
And what I'd like to say to that is I know in our last budget, or in our last board meeting, you know, it was talked about pushing this maybe not on the November ballot, pushing it out till next year. And I just would urge the board to really consider getting something developed by August so that we can get this on a ballot for November. I believe August is the cutoff date. But we've got 3 months to work hard and get something developed that we can get on, whether it's, you know, a new sheriff's district, whether it's a consumption tax, whether it's an income tax, whatever it is. to get something developed, to get on the ballot for this fall, because like we've all said here, I'm imagining once or twice in the last few years, we're just kicking the can down the road here. We've got to solve the problem. No more Band-Aids. It's got to get solved. I don't want to see the roadmaster standing up here again next year telling us how the road fund's depleted. I'd like to hear him say, wow, we gained 800,000 in the road fund this year. So, and I'd like to hear our sheriff say, I'm fully staffed and I've got everyone I need. So, you know, we've got to fix this problem.
And that's, then I would like to make a motion just as a member of the budget committee, to see if the budget committee is in favor of putting something, revenue generation measure on the November ballot.
I'll second that.
Third.
JJ?
I just wanted to say real quick though, that, this would just be a recommendation, really the power to do that is gonna be resting with the
Right.
board at the board
Yes.
meeting. I'm just clarifying.
Right.
That was my understanding.
So, go ahead, JJ.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Well, look,
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying nay.
No?
No.
Nay?
And I kind of thought we'd have some discussion first, Chair, on,
2 days.
well, can we go back?
Yeah, we can go back.
Yeah, so, motion, second, discussion. And the reason I'm leaning, I think we haven't seen anything get passed in this county for this type of thing ever. And I think, to me, November's ballot is, in my mind, radioactive, plain and simple. With what's on there, the amount of recession we're in, and all that's going on in the world, not just Curry County, I just think I don't like it, personally. I just think this, when we figure out what we want to do and what we want to take to the public, I want to go to Rotaries and Seroptimists and all these,
With confidence?
with confidence, and I want it to come to, this is what the county, we've come together as a county and said, this is what we want to do. I know August, got June, July, August. I think to push it, it's just,
Go ahead.
As a practical matter, obviously, my profession sort of speaks for me, on occasion more often than not about balancing. Generally would be, it's always advisable to have more money than expenses. And despite the moving money from to a department that needs it versus one that might have some level of surplus, we are left with addressing a deficit. And in an accounting and finance profession, that really is a priority, and that even if the electorate does not either understand or agree with you, presenting the facts would most likely work in our favor, whether they agree to it or not. Then down the road, when we run into a more serious deficit, where the sheriff cannot hire as many people as they want, the lack of support will then eventually convince them to, that there is a need for additional revenue. But the very idea of having a deficit,
And not addressing it.
it just isn't acceptable.
And I think
That's been the focus of my participation here.
And I think the recommendation is that the commissioners do something about it. When you do that is,
yep.
that's a decision the three of you will have to make, but the recommendation is you gotta do something.
Okay, to speak to that, Chair, is the six of us haven't even come up with, we haven't even agreed on one thing. So we're gonna take something and have it finalized by August?
Well, it's, my
You
perspective.
know what I
It would
mean?
be for the three of you, because obviously
Yeah,
you're
but I mean,
going to make
this-
that decision, and
right.
I'm happy to be part of the process as a budget committee member. At the same time, what I'm seeing in the political situation in Oregon right now is we have an electorate who's very concerned about law enforcement, very concerned about crime, and I think this would be a good time when people are aware of the problems and motivated to do something to protect their communities, to protect their state. It would be a very good time to put something on the ballot that would have, that would beef up our law enforcement and secure our law enforcement. That isn't always the case. So that would be my recommendation from what I see happening in our state and in our community.
Mr. Pash.
And what I'd like to say to you, Commissioner, is this is a great time to talk about it, because right now, we can talk and work on this, where as soon as they go away, we can't talk anymore. You know, it all has to be done in private. I have to put something together and then give it to county council, and then he has to mail it to you, and it becomes this, mess, where right now we can sit and talk about this and work on it. And so now's a good time, I think. Let's decide, what is the best approach to take at this and move it forward.
Mr. Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee Member Shriver, you make a very good point. There is a new awareness throughout the country, in my opinion, and just supporting what you just said. The crime wave in Oregon. Until it actually affects you personally, most people are not aware. So I agree with that. But I also agree with Commissioner Herzog in that you put something on the November ballot when our state and federal government is absolutely addicted to spending. People are going to just, my fear is we only get one chance and only one chance. We cannot rush this. Commissioner Pash, that's what workshops are for. So we can sit down and talk all we need to talk. We probably need to put a little more emphasis on that. Just like now, this is good discussion time. This is invaluable, in my opinion, for what it's worth. And I would just encourage you to read that information. My take on what happens if we rush this from the three task force, the two task force, and getting the county order people together, and then go out and help us recruit the people we need for these programs. Shoot for March, shoot for May, a year from now, and that's my best attempt at timing on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we all agree that we need to generate more revenue. I think we all agree on that. When to do that, that's obviously up for discussion. How to do that's up for discussion. The budget that Brad has in front of him right now, the numbers that are laid out the way they are we all comfortable with that? We all agree on that.
Well, I'm not comfortable with it, but I accept that they're probably
comfortable may be a bad word, but
No, I know what you meant.
that's our best option.
Okay.
Do we agree on that? Mr. Baker?
Yes, with respect to the work that Brad has done. Absolutely. We're left with an answer that is difficult to accept, from a professional perspective. It's different for the electorate. Over the years, as I've seen the federal deficit kind of grow out of proportion, I am left with the question, sort of half humorous, half serious, is that if you were a loan officer of the bank, would you loan money to the federal government?
No.
That's the basis on which the budgeting is done. We love deficits. I hate them.
Good for you.
I mean, if granted, if you have a difficult year, that would be fine and great, with the assumption that you would make up for such a deficit in future years. Right now, our current deficit does not address circumstances that would require additional funds, whatever that may be. The building obviously is a good example here, but the funds aren't there. The funds are not there. So Brad's work is extremely professional and conservative. I'm a liberal in social and political life, but I'm a fiscal conservative. difficult protocols, but anyway.
Well, and we have no way to know whether anything would pass or anything would move forward or what the potential future revenue would be or what it would generate. So we really have two issues here, right? We have one issue, which is what Brad has in front of him and whether we move that forward, and then the other issue is the future. So, Ed?
Well, to answer your question, yes, I think Brad's done a good job, and I'm ready to vote today on the approving the budget. But on the motion on the table, I have one disagreement with Commissioner Boyce, is that you said that it's, you have one chance. I don't think so. I think we could put something, or the Board of Commissioners could put something on the ballot in November. If it doesn't, so for some reason it doesn't pass, we learn. We use that as a learning experience, and we move on from there. We could go ahead and study this for another 6-9 months and make a decision to put something on the ballot, and then I'd rather learn in November than learn in May or next November or something like that. So, the key here is to figure out what the public will support. But the only reason that the only way we really do that is to put something on the ballot to find out what they do support. So that's my reason for making a motion to do this or recommend that we do this in November.
And just to follow up on something that Ed said, if you do nothing, we will use road funds next
It'll be
year.
in next year's budget this time next year.
Yeah, we're gonna probably use 5 or more.
What I want to say is, why couldn't we put 2 questions on the ballot? This question, or if you disagree with this question, would you support this question? Do 2 different things. Do an income tax and or a consumption tax. Which one would you support? And whichever one gets the most vote is be the one that passed. I don't know if it has to have a 30% line or whatever that is either. I don't know the election part of that. That's for our clerk to elections officers to know that. But like I say, waiting till next year, you're going to be next March. You're going to be in this room talking about this right now all over again.
The reality is, even if something were to pass, that revenue is not going to be there yet. So,
But you can project it out.
you can project it out, but you're still going to be pulling from the road funds until that actually happens. So, that is the reality that this county faces, which is why this is such an important issue in moving forward. But we really have that issue, and that should be bifurcated from the issue that is the current numbers that Brad has in front of him, and whether or not we can move that forward.
Even if the voters elect not to have any kind of tax increase, the consumer tax, the property tax, I think we've sort of done away with for the moment. If they agree not to raise revenue, they have to be aware of the effect that vote has
Consequences for their actions.
on our cash flow.
Yeah.
Cause and
Our
effect.
ability to use funds. So it's great. Commissioners would agree that having an electorate that makes a vote, they should be informed of their informed vote, and that and the implications that comes with it.
First thing military teach you, consequences for your action or inaction. There's a consequence for it.
Yes.
So, on the ballot, I can't remember what year it was, would you support a consumption tax? 78%.
Failed. All right.
But that was a tax on everything, real
Yeah,
estate,
it was
it was across the board.
And it wasn't a good question. It was too vague or too encompassing or whatever.
I don't remember, did the commissioners all support that at that time? I don't think they did. I don't think there was an effort to educate the community about the need for it. I don't think any of that happened.
Yeah, so.
November is several months away, and.
It was strictly advisory, that's all.
And
we learned from it.
November is several months away, and the reality is, if the 3 of you choose to wait, then expect to use a road fund. If you don't wait and you put it on the ballot, then you can learn from it, you can reevaluate it, and perhaps it moves forward, and we bridge that gap until we can come up with a long-term solution. So I mean, those are your options in front of you right now, right? And it's like the options, to me, the options are relatively simple. It's just making the choice of which option you're gonna pick.
You've had two hands come up behind you. The treasurer and the roadmaster, both, so
Okay,
it's up to you.
further discussion?
We have a motion
I'm
and a
just-
second on the floor.
Right, we have a motion and a second on the floor, which, can we go back over that motion again?
As long as you're gonna allow additional discussion.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think this is quite worthy, so anyway, yes, thank you.
Okay, so my motion was to recommend that the Board of Commissioners put a revenue measure on the November 2022 ballot.
That's the
I seconded
recommendation.
that.
You seconded that, and I think the two of you said no. Do you still stand with that, or do you want to change that?
I'm gonna stand as a no vote, Mr. Chair.
Well, it doesn't matter, cause we got 4-2, so, and I'm waffling. Whatever we do, we gotta get together as the board, the county, the electeds, and everybody.
Well, certainly, if you put that, and I guess if you redefine Mr. Schreiber's option with more clarity, it would be that if you're gonna put something on the November ballot, it's not that you're gonna do nothing in between now and November.
Right.
Okay, there's a lot of work that's gotta be done. You gotta pick the right one, right? Yeah, I mean, Dave Barnes is working on something that's gotta kick her back to the community. Council's gotta weigh in on what the legalities of the language are in that. There's a ton of work that has to be done on that, and then there may be another option that you come up with in the interim, which is, maybe it narrows the focus of what's gonna be taxed. Maybe you narrow that focus and there is no kicker, which cleans the language up a little bit. Maybe you broaden it, you make the kicker bigger back to the people in this community, or in this county. You'll have to work all those out, but I think what Mr. Schreiber is saying is that the recommendation is really a commitment from you that you're gonna do that.
Well, it's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation.
That they do. Yeah.
Right, it's a
From the
recommend.
Budget Committee to the.
Yeah,
to
it's
the board.
it's a recommendation from the Budget Committee that the three of you will do that work, will educate the community, will prepare this to be on the ballot in November, and do everything, do your due diligence to make that happen. That's the recommendation. And that recommendation, and I support that recommendation, because if you don't, we're using road funds.
And possibly still even.
Right.
Yeah. So since the last meeting, if I may, we have found out that the kicker is off the board, right?
Yeah.
No? Not necessarily? I thought we had, so,
Consideration,
huh?
my understanding is.
But they're,
It's up to the chair.
Go ahead, Dave.
Watch your head, David. I always tell everybody when they turn that corner.
David Barnes, County Treasurer. Yes, the whole issue with the kicker is a sticky one. We received word from, I think it was Legislative Counsel's office last week, where they brought up where there might be a sticking point with the Interstate Commerce Commission and some other things about that. But, so, if it's going to become difficult to do, then we take the kicker off the table. But as I said from the very beginning, the things that we're looking at taxing, the average household in Curry County would pay approximately $100 a year, $2 a week for this tax, so it's not that much. I have to agree with Mr. Schreiber. We don't just get one shot at this. There's an election every November. There's a new ballot every November, and we can keep trying until we get it. Learn from each time that it failed. The last time, as we said before, there was 78% of the people said no to just an advisory question that was just one sentence. There was no promotion done. There was no support from the committee on it. There was nothing. 22% of the people said yes to that without anything. To me, that's huge. We only need to, if we double that and add 5 points to it, we win. You know, it passes. So to say that it went down 78%, yes, but it was 22% were in favor. And I think we build on that. To build on that 22% is what we really need to do. We need to act, though. If we're not going to do this year, please let me know. I'll put the stuff in the bottom of the file cabinet. It can sit there for the rest of my time in office, because if we don't do it now, you're looking at $4 million here. At least, by my calculations, you're looking at a minimum of $4 million to come into the county in terms of revenue. It plugs the deficit, it plugs the gap that we have this year. It'll plug it again next year and the year after and every year going forward. If you're not gonna act on this now, I don't know when you're planning on it. You know, I don't know when you would want to do it. Do you want to wait another year? That's another $4 million out of the road fund that we're going to be talking about. And if you're not going to act, then yes, then the road fund is going to deplete. It's going to deplete quickly and it's going to be gone. And then what do we do then? Then we ask the state. Then we ask the state for help.
Now you are. I'm sorry. Now you are concerned road funds are going to be gone?
Please
Because
don't
you've been-
interrupt me, sir.
Well, answer the question if you would, please.
If we're going to keep spending $4 million a year out of the road fund, then yes.
Okay. I think that changes your position. That's why I'm just a little baffled, because you said it would be good for 20 years.
Whatever. I'm not
Can I
gonna
say
argue
something?
with you.
Yes.
Well, that's what you
Mr.
said.
Pash.
I just want to say that it's something that you said actually a month or so ago. The way to sell this to our public is you got to ask yourself 2 questions. First, do you want law enforcement? Do you want to be protected by law enforcement in this county? And if your answer to that question is yes, how are you going to pay for it? And that's your ballot measure.
Right, and then you also put some language in there. Do you want to keep using the county savings account to pay for this, or do you want to pay for it this way?
And that's an easy, that's a
it's-
sell to me. That is a sell.
I mean, I don't know how to make that, I don't know how to make that more simple, and that's what this community needs to understand. We have a savings account. It's called the road funds. We keep pulling money out of the savings account to pay our bills, to pay for the services that we all need. And if we continue to do that, eventually, like any savings account, it will be gone. And if we take some action now, we can stop that from happening. I mean,
And it's going to cost you this much, not this much.
right, and the property taxes is not an answer to that because of the special districts and the alignment of that money. That's not gonna fill those gaps, it's not gonna work.
That's
And
down the road, maybe that could.
it's, yeah, and realigning that, I think, is the answer, because that doesn't cost anybody any money, but that's problematic and it takes time to do, but we need to bridge that gap right now. And we need to do something to bridge that gap. We need to take some action, not talk about it, but actually do something to bridge that gap. And there's some pretty good ideas on the table of how to bridge that gap. There should probably be a time limit on this, so it doesn't just continue forever. And that's language that could also be incorporated in that, which, you know, maybe there's a 4-year window on that. It gives the Board of Commissioners time to figure out the process to realign that money, to reallocate that money. And I also think we should get some of that timber back. That's how this county proffered a long time ago. That's how we paid our bills. Why can't we have it back? You know, let's fight.
Yeah.
I mean, let's fight for that.
I wanted to summarize, hopefully I'm doing that, with the following statement, is that whenever a municipality or a company, commercial entity, whatever, whenever to the electorate or the shareholders, whenever a company has a deficit, it is the responsibility of the heads of the government, the commissioners in this case, the budget committee, to inform the electorate saying, we have a deficit. And here are the steps we can do to correct it. Okay, it's our responsibility to do that.
And you have to choose one of those steps, they tell them. You have to choose it.
Precisely, you have to go it down, but you know, if somebody's making a decision, hopefully it's an informed one, but if you inform them, you fulfill their responsibility by communicating what's going on here.
I know we have a deficit, but we also have the savings account that Brad is talking about. So we do have a deficit in reality, though we do have the savings account. And I don't want to use, you know, so I mean, it's not like, you know what I'm saying, Doug? Because we do have 20 million in the road fund. So
18.
That is in the process, slowly but surely,
all right.
of being used. I mean,
So can we
there's
say
no
we have a
question that
deficit?
It's like the social security
We-
fund.
You annually have a deficit. You have a savings account, but annually you have a deficit.
But that deficit is, another component of that deficit is the fact that those road funds change our credit rating. They change what we can borrow, the grants we get, it impacts other revenue sources and streams. So that's gotta be taken into consideration. So it's absolutely safe to say there is a deficit, absolutely. I feel 100% confident in that. And guys, this is really leadership 101, okay? You detach from the problem. You can't fix the problem when you're in the problem, so you detach and you step back away from the problem as a leader, and you look at the horizon and you look at all the options in front of you. Then you prioritize and you execute. That's what you do. So right now, take a step back, take a breath, look at the problem, and then prioritize the problem. So identify the mechanism that you want to move forward, and then execute it by putting it on there. And then you have a window of time now, what is it, 6 months or whatever it is, before the next election, to inform this community, of what it is you want to do and how you're going to resolve that problem. So if you just put it on the ballot, that's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Mr. Chair, you have Roadmaster Christensen behind you, and then I'd like to go next if I may.
Mr. Christensen, are you going to talk about this issue?
Yes.
Okay.
What you did.
Thank you for letting me talk, Chair. And like I've said before, in the past, I always follow success and tackle hard problems. And we have 2 sister counties that are just like us that passed temporary sheriff property tax levies, Josephine County and Lynn County. Okay, they did that to give them some time to do these things. Josephine County, Danny Young offered to come down here and talk with us. And I believe this year they're looking at a consumption tax that's like 6 months out of the year during tourist season. And so there's people that have already been successful with temporary tax levies in counties that are just like us, that already done everything that we're talking about, that made all the door hangers, that did all the community meetings, and they have their constituents are just like ours. And so why reinvent the wheel? And so I think, I like the idea that we put all these proposals on there, you know, consumption, different kinds, like the one Josephine County is currently trying for, and also the one Mr. Barnes is trying to put together, and also tax measures that are dedicated to sheriff, like Lynn County was successful, and Josephine County. And I also like the idea of the one with Mary Road this morning. It's all good, but none of that, and I agree with Commissioner Herzog, that none of this is really gonna matter unless we have a unified board and unified leadership. And one of the things, you know, because I looked into this like a year ago, I've been working on this because I got a dog in the fight. And so when I talked with elections, you know, we do have 5 sheriff tax levies that didn't pass, and there is history. And guess what? There's a lot of people that worked on those that are still here, and they know why those didn't pass. But you know, one of the biggest reasons I heard they didn't pass is because we were maybe asking too much money. Other was, you know what, we didn't have a unified board.
Other was, you know what, we didn't go out to the public and reach out to them in an effective manner with why. So we know the reasons why these 5 didn't pass, and it takes where, you know, that's why we're trying to get Jay Gruber to come down here and talk with us, how we can all work together and communicate and get a common goal. And I think, you know, the first step is get some type of a sheriff temporary tax levy, and we have 2 sister counties that have completed it. So why are we not looking at them? And so that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
I think we are, and I think it's on the table. I think it's to be discussed. So,
Yeah, and the one in Josephine County, from what I understand, took 3 or 4 times before they actually got it passed, and it was that the sheriff's department was actually ready to close up shop, I
Yeah.
think, for
yeah,
a broad sense.
I want to say it was the 3rd time, I think it
Yeah.
was. But yeah, and it was like,
Dire.
yeah, it was gonna happen. So, and you know what? That may happen here. It may go there.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't alleviate your responsibility to try, to fight.
And that's why I'd rather be proactive and get something on the ballot and learn from it. But I believe if we plan this properly, we've got from now to August to get what we need on the ballot. And then we've got from August to November to get the people in this county educated.
Yep.
So that it is fresh on the tip of their tongue when they look at that ballot. It's on the tip of their, oh yeah, they've been talking about this for months. Yes, we need law enforcement.
And the voters should decide. The voters should decide. And I completely support that. But they cannot decide if it's not in front of them.
So with that, I'm gonna change my vote because you 3 are the public right now.
Yep.
And if we're gonna listen to the public, which that's what I said I would do, and that's what you've got, you know, so that's, but we're gonna have to, you know, just like this commissioner was on the roof last year, making sure things didn't leak this winter, that's what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to go to work.
Yeah, you are. You are.
And,
Yep. And the people of this county should run this county. The voters run this county. And it's their voice that should be heard loudly. You have a comment?
we're having a workshop tomorrow.
I'm sorry?
We're gonna have a workshop tomorrow, and I expect everybody to be here, 'cause we gotta figure out something.
I'd be interested to know how much of the general population watches these budget meetings on YouTube.
Not many.
12 people.
Yeah. That's why it's gonna take
Available, they probably don't know about it.
it's gonna take an effort to get the information out.
But, I mean, to me, it's exciting, so.
Public channel's still not working on TV.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you. So, the comments that Roadmaster Christensen made, would the August attempt be a stopgap measure, perhaps just for law enforcement? Is that what he said, or is that what you interpreted?
It's an option.
Okay. The 5 years I've been here, I've not kicked the can down the road. I've always put up policy, and it's always been defeated. On the consumption tax, on the forestry department, we could have logged a year ago. Look at my agenda writing clip for June 9th. $1,500 I asked the board. So no, I'm not gonna let anybody think that I kicked the can down the road. I'm here every day, and
I
I've
don't
tried to
think
come up
anybody
with
said
policy.
that.
That term was used today. I'm only offering, Mr. Chair, I don't want the public to think that I've been sitting here the whole time. I've tried to come up with policy.
I don't think that was what was inferred at all.
Okay, well, I'm gonna move on then to an August date, presumably. There are some legal questions. We don't have a plan, okay? That makes me real nervous. But I did pick up a little bit on, and I had not thought of this, picked up a little bit on if it was just a special district for law enforcement. You know, I'd take a second look at that personally, and as a commissioner. But when it comes to the legalities, we better get Council Pope an extra assistant, because we're going to be spending a lot of time with the Oregon Department of Revenue to determine what we can do in the Secretary of State's office, what we can do as far as the ballots go. practically speaking, I don't see how this can be done in 3 months. Even if we do, if the board does accept a task force for, just one specific to that goal, I just don't see how we can get it done in 3 months. And you heard him say, I think it's accurate that we've already failed 5 times. We cannot fail again. So if it takes a few extra months to get the right plan, that's where I'm coming from. We cannot, you set yourself up for failure. It's like you're saying, okay, they'll probably vote it down, but we're going to come back in 4 months, 8 months, whatever. I just have a little bit of an issue with that. I felt the tension go up here just a little bit ago, and to what extent I might have contributed to that, I apologize. But yeah, sorry. We're all very passionate about getting this done and figuring it away and teaming up. And come back to my concept of opportunities. I'm still going to stay a no vote unless that motion is changed to take a serious look, recommending the budget committee to the board of commissioners that is strictly a law enforcement levy. I think I can go out and go door to door on that. But on a consumption tax or raising the property taxes, no, that's not going to get the support we need, in my opinion.
I think the recommendation is to move an option forward to the voters. I think it's up to you to determine what that option is. Commissioner Patch.
I just find it interesting that Commissioner Boyce has been bringing up a consumption tax for about 3 years now. And when it was brought up to me again about a year or so ago, year and a half ago, I told him that I would support that if he would bring it to the board. And he said he needed help to do that. So it was never moved forward. Then Mr. Barnes, our treasurer, did finally take the ball and run with it. I personally believe this is a pretty simple issue. We identify what we're going to make taxable. We identify the people that's going to affect. We identify, is this going to be a kickback or not a kickback? Or, I hate to use that word kickback, but a refundable kicker. Is it going to be an annual process? I mean, these are questions that,
right.
The hardest part to this is defining what we're going to ask the public to vote on to be taxed and at what rate. And that's the hardest part to the whole thing. The question is easy. And then getting the information out there, it's a question of, are we going to hire a firm to do that, which I would probably support more than us, and with us going door to door as well. But I think a PR firm would be a great way because you can get commercial time, all that stuff on television, which is a lot of our seniors don't move off the chair sometimes. As I'm getting older, I'm learning that.
Right.
But that's just the process. To come up with the question and what we're going to put on the ballot is, I don't think it's going to take that long. It's going to take some work, but I don't find it as a difficult process.
Which
It's
is
identifying.
Sounds like you're prioritizing and try to execute what the problem is. So, and that's part of the solution process. And here's the other problem. This is the other problem, and it's what I'm campaigning on. It's like 3 commissioners. We need 5. If there was 5 commissioners, it would change this. 2 of you could talk. 2 of you could work together on this, and it would totally change the dynamics and the effectiveness of this commission. So that's my opinion. Anyway.
Mr. Chair, it sounds like you're campaigning, and you've done that several times today. I think that's not advisable. I don't think it's proper either. I wish you wouldn't do that.
Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you.
Mr. Boyce.
It sounds like you're campaigning, and you shouldn't on a budget committee, so.
Again, thank you for your opinion. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Just a thought is, if this motion passes and you do attempt to put something on the ballot, it's really important that people understand the status quo won't work, right? I mean, you can't have status quo. If you vote no on this, then you're saying either we're gonna have to reduce law enforcement, we're gonna have to, not do bridges and roads as much, right? So from what the previous speaker said, there is a desperation there that the voters need to understand that maybe wasn't apparent in those 5 previous ballot measures. But we're to the point of it's becoming desperate, and a decision needs to be made by the voters.
And I agree with Commissioner Herzog. If this board or this committee decides to move this forward and ask this board to come up with it, let's have a workshop. Maybe not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. Let's ask the budget committee to come back and other people in the county that want to not vote yes or no on it now, but come up with the proper way to approach this, to have Treasurer Barnes literally come in and let's lay numbers on the table and
Yep.
the whole thing, the whole gambit, lay it out on the table and let's talk about this. And
Yep.
then talk about, you know, a levy and get it moving.
And encourage community input.
Community support, exactly. With people that are knowledgeable and want to contribute, not come here and throw stones at it.
Right.
Since time is of the essence here, I can't see waiting 2 weeks, let's do it next week.
Yeah, next Wednesday, have a special meeting, that's fine.
Took the words right out of my mouth, because if there is an urgency and there is a workshop, I want to ask you to amend the budget to be, amend your motion to be more specific. I don't think that'll be necessary. Does that make sense?
I'm not amenable to amend the budget, because I think that leaves to you all the most flexibility, so.
I think you said amend this recommendation, is that
No,
what you're talking about?
amend the motion. I was originally asking to amend it to maybe have a task force or be specific with just the sheriff's levy. But now I don't think that's necessary, because what I'm hearing the group
Right.
get a consensus on.
So we have a motion, it was seconded, we have a vote, if I understand correctly. JJ?
Well, it's a vote of 5-1. You want me to call it again?
I don't, yes, call it again.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
All right,
say
Boyce
nay.
is changing his vote. Good discussion. Thank you.
Oh, you said
Stefan.
yay.
Now I'm changing my vote, yes.
Carried
All right.
unanimously.
All right. All right. Now I'd like to move forward to the other issue, which is what Brad has in front of him and what we've been working on. The time-sensitive issue, which is the current budget. Discussion on that.
I'll move to approve so we can have discussion.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the budget as it stands amended as of this morning.
Second.
And we have a second. Discussion. Anybody?
I approve with reservations. Is that possible?
Of course. Of course, I think
For lunch,
that's-
you got reservations for
I think
where?
I think it's safe to say, well, if there's no further discussion, we can vote on it then. JJ?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Motion carried unanimously.
We have a budget.
I took 5 seconds. We waited all day for that.
All right.
So do we want to meet again? Is that
Next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday.
that? I'll have to check my schedule, but.
So you're talking about
A
meet
workshop.
again in a workshop environment. That's not a budget meeting, it's a workshop environment where we would be contributing with input
Mhm.
to a BOC workshop,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
So do we have a workshop this week?
No.
Why
There's one
You
scheduled
said something
for-
about yes, tomorrow.
why can't we do it this Wednesday? We got time because it has to be, if we don't have a workshop shop scheduled, let's schedule one.
All right, I'm good with that.
I just got
You
some
guys don't-
information I want to pass on.
Okay.
It'll only take 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. I have been in contact with Christine Drazen from the, she's running for governor.
Yeah.
But my concerns were about Measure 110 and all the money that we were getting brought in from the marijuana taxes is now going to, because of 110, not coming to us, but it's going for programs. She said there were millions and millions of dollars in those programs that there are no programs for. So we're gonna work on trying to redistribute all that money that we're getting back to law enforcement. So, you know, that's a lot of money that potentially could come into our.
It's a $500 million.
But, the but is, if she gets elected, right?
Well, yeah.
So-
I hope
so-
anybody that gets elected will work on that.
Well,
And we just got to, you know,
What she's-
support them doing that.
What
Yeah.
she's letting us know is that it's there and we need to go after that money.
I know a lady that if she gets it, they won't.
Yes, but the party in power presently would, in the past, they prioritized education and public schools. So it's very likely that law enforcement might be on the short end of the
Yes.
stick statewide.
Yeah.
It's back to government-sponsored crack pipes. not, and similar. So, yeah, we have to go fight for it. Adapt Health is already working on that, so I think hopefully we'll have some good news there eventually.
Well, let's do this. You tell us when figure out when you can do the workshop, let us know, and I will make it a priority to be at this workshop.
Wednesday at 2?
2 o'clock?
2 o'clock on Wednesday?
2 o'clock on Wednesday.
How about Monday?
No, 2 o'clock on Wednesday is good.
Yeah.
Can we have a syllabus, can we have an outline of the topics in this workshop? For some of us who are new to approaching such a topic, we might want to do a little bit of research before showing up.
Well, it's just what we talked about. If I may, Chair,
Yeah.
it's just about,
If there isn't, then there isn't. But
it's just about what we're gonna put on the ballot in November. What?
Just
that's-
discussion.
That's
Yeah.
all, that's
It's
all
not
it
broken
is.
down into topics, segments of considerations, how to get there.
No,
And
that's the main agenda item.
we
so.
would be contributing as community members to the workshop and adding to the discussion about moving forward, not as budget committee members.
Yeah,
And that's 2 o'clock on Wednesday.
yeah.
And as far as a future budget committee meeting, that'll be as needed, I think.
Yeah.
Right now, we'll leave that open, and then Brad, you'll communicate with me as needed, and then in the event that we need to reevaluate or move forward as a budget committee, we will do that in the future. But as for now, we have a recommendation to move this budget forward. All right? Mr. Boyce?
Thank you. June 9th is a vague memory that's when the Board of Commissioners officially approves the budget, correct?
Yeah, adopting the budget will happen
Is it June 8th?
June 8th.
Okay, I was off one day. And then, Mr. Chair, I want to ask Council Pope if he had anything at all that he might be thinking.
No, I just wanted some clarification. It was gonna be this Wednesday at 2 o'clock, just so we can get it scheduled.
Yes, 2 o'clock.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, I have nothing else to add.
All right,
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
meeting adjourned.
We are adjourned.
Thanks for your work, guys.
Is that here at 2 o'clock? I know.
Sorry, which Wednesday is this week?
2 days from now, yeah. Get her done.
Okay, so